Hey, this is DHG, and I'm doing my review for Call of Juarez, Gunslinger. And I'm going to be using all the same normal categories I do when doing my reviews. First things first, graphics. This game uses Chrome Engine 5, so it's going to look good on PC. I gotta say though, if this game also came out on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, if you're playing on one of those two platforms, Chrome Engine 5, as good as it looked on PC, it was kind of like Unreal 3 engine back in those days. It did not look good on console. I don't know what it was, maybe lack of memory, VRAM, something like that, but it had a lot of texture pop up. Like if you've ever played through Borderlands or something like that, or an even better example would be Dead Island, which was also made by Techland. You just see textures pop up everywhere, and sometimes it would take as long as like 45 seconds for a simple texture like junk on a sidewalk to load. But on PC, as you can see here, I played this in 4K with max settings. Some of the things show its age, like you could tell it was made of lower resolution textures, but for the most part, it looks great, especially the environments. So I got no gripes about the graphics. The gameplay, it's pretty straightforward first-person shooter, Western themed. They don't really do anything out of the ordinary when it comes to akimbo weapons, or they try to add like a fast reload mechanic. I didn't really notice a difference when I reloaded normally or with that. Maybe sped up the reload by about 50%, but it usually, if I did not do the reload, it just gave me more time to duck behind cover and recover my health. So I didn't really think it was that cool of a mechanic. Oh, I skipped over controls. Well, I'll just get to that now. That's also pretty standard. Pretty much this goes off of what Call of Duty 4 did. Oh, you can see in the gameplay here, it gives you little snippets of people within that time period. This one was Great General Dwight Eisenhower. If you're familiar with World War II, you probably heard his name. But the controls are straightforward for everything post Call of Duty 4, where, left trigger, or if you're using mouse and keyboard, you know what the deal is. Left trigger aims, right trigger shoots, and everything else. You all know what I'm talking about. For the gameplay, the only things that I noticed that were a little out of the ordinary, a little different from what they did, was they had this. It was like a concentration mechanic. I didn't really see anything like that again until. Oh, I forgot about the first Red Dead. Red Dead Redemption, the first one. I don't know about Red Dead Revolver. I haven't played that yet. That's on my short list. But the concentration mechanic is kind of like that. It's not exactly the same. But they also had this cool mechanic where if you were on your left, right there, that was perfect timing too. You could either get hit by that bullet and you had to restart, or you could dodge the bullet if you were quick enough, see the trajectory of it, and then move out of the way. That, on harder difficulty levels, would be really neat, and it would be a really cool lifesaver. Of course, you have to wait for your gauge in the upper left to refill. But I thought that was a really neat mechanic, and I'm surprised I haven't seen it in more games since. It gets you a little more into the gameplay, and you really have to pay more attention. I liked it. Some others may hate it. It's kind of like got a mini gamey feel, but not so much. That's just my opinion. The sound, I don't have any complaints about the sounds. All the guns sound like they should. They're poppy. Uh, Explosions sound good. Music, typical Western stuff. They did some sort of mystical things with some of the levels involving the Native Americans, which is kind of stereotypical, but I'm not one to complain about that. Stereotypes come from somewhere anyway. Story. The story was pretty neat. First time I tried playing through this, I couldn't really get into it just because I didn't want to constantly have the narrative going during the gameplay, hearing it in my ear while I'm trying to focus on the firefights. But this time I thought it was pretty cool. Story ended up having a pretty cool conclusion. You get to choose how it ends. But I can't complain about the story. Like some other first-person shooters just throw it in there because, you got to. I wish they wouldn't. But this one actually did something with it. Stability and bugs. Stability is fine. I didn't have any crashing or anything like that. Bugs. I did have one bug somewhere. It was on this level too. I can't remember exactly what it was. I was supposed to kill someone and they weren't spawning in properly. Somewhere along those lines, but you just reload the checkpoint and it's not a problem. And my final opinions. I thought what they tried to do here, just because Call of Juarez wasn't really a big series, it's still not a big series. I've played 2 of the 3 games in the main installment. I've played Bound in Blood and I've played the Cartel. The Cartel sucked, but Bound in Blood was pretty cool. I have yet to play the first one. But they just took this in like a full Western shooter direction, and while it's still focused on story, it's not as focused on story as the other ones. Bound in Blood was very heavy in story, and Call of Juarez was just like, I meant the Cartel. Call of Juarez, the Cartel was pretty much just a Call of Duty version of Call of Juarez. Very unoriginal. I wouldn't mind seeing the series revived, but if they don't, I can see why they wouldn't do it. There are much better games out there if you want to play a Western right now, like Red Dead. And if I had to rate this on my scale, all things considered, I'd say average, because you're not really going to be that into this game unless you really like Westerns like myself. But if you're more into the military shooters, stuff like that, you probably wouldn't be interested in this at all. So that's my rating. Average.